Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 2026 Director's Closeup. My name is Jeremy Aguilera-Gaudet, Project Manager for Education and International Programs at Film Independent, and I'm excited to dive into what will be an insightful and in-depth discussion on the craft of screenwriting. I would like to thank this year's incredible supporters of the Director's Closeup, the Directors Guild of America, SAG Indie, and IMDb Pro. And thank you to our 2026 Film Independent Spirit Awards supporters, premier sponsor Lavazza Coffee, principal sponsor IMDb Pro, and official partner Fiji Water. We appreciate their support and devotion to the independent film community. The five writers joining us tonight have all written exciting, thought-provoking, and original independent films that have resonated emotionally with film-going audiences. To ask questions tonight, please use the Q&A function located at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we will get to as many of them as we can during the panel. And the writers joining us tonight are Michael Angelo, Covino, and Kyle Marvin, the writing team behind Splitsville. Hey, Michael. Hey,
Hi.
Kyle, for joining.
Hey, everyone.
And Angus MacLachlan, a writer of A Little Prayer. Hey, Angus.
Hi.
James Sweeney, writer of Twinless.
Hello.
Hi, James. And Christian Swega, writer of Sovereign. Hey, Christian.
Hi.
Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. And moderating tonight's panel is screenwriter Daniel Waters. Welcome, Daniel.
Hello.
Wonderful. All right, Daniel, take it away. Have a great panel.
Hello, everyone. I did a marathon rewatch of all the nominated films yesterday, and it made me high. I learned a lot about the healing power of babies and sandwiches. Your films are all excellent, and I hope this will be a relaxing love fest. Some people think they'd make a great director. Some people think they'd make a great actor. But everyone thinks they'd make a great writer. Everyone, your friends, your family members, your Trader Joe's cashier, has an awesome idea for a movie, and soon, if not already, they'll be able to press an AI button and turn this idea into something scripted. You folks didn't have a magic button. Take me back to the spark. Sorry, I'm getting a little rambunctious. Take me back to the spark that told you this isn't just a cool idea. This is something I'm going to write. This is something I have to write. This is something I'm going to finish. Something I'm going to get a Spirit nomination for. God damn it. James Sweeney, you mad genius. This is your second nomination after the dazzling Straight Up. I imagine you have 8 ideas on the runway at all times. What made your control tower choose Twinless?
Thank you. Well, the year that I started writing Twinless, I had been broken up by my identical twin boyfriend. Sorry, he was not my identical twin. He was my boyfriend who wasn't identical. And I don't remember at what point I heard about the concept of a twin bereavement support group, but it really just struck me as such a profound and singular loss. So naturally, I decided to make a comedy about it, and I think it resurfaced like memories of my childhood when I was the most fascinated and yearning for having a long lost twin that I didn't know I had. So yeah, I mean I started writing in 2015, so it's kind of hard to remember exactly like the spark that you say, but it's somewhere in the midst of those series of events.
Well, it fell into your lap. That's amazing. Wow. Angus, you knocked Spirit World out with June Bag a while ago, and now you're back with a gentle vengeance. Tell us of the birth of A Little Prayer.
Kind of like what James says, it started so long ago that I can't really remember the impetus to write it. So many things went into it. When I write something, I have a long time where I'm just taking notes, and then characters emerge, and then story, and it just keeps growing. And I don't think I can't really answer why that thing has some hook in you that's so strong that makes you want to continue to write it, and then in my case produce it and direct it as well. I mean, it was a long journey.
Do you ever have moments where you think you're going to abandon it? What kept you back? What kept you going?
I didn't think I never thought I was going to abandon it, but it kept dying and being on life support system so many times. It kept dying, and all my friends, and relatives know that I would say, well, it's over. That's it. It's not going to happen. And then I would just keep continuing to try to make it realized.
Great. Kyle and Michael, this isn't your first masterpiece rodeo either. Love The Climb, love Splitsville. What brought you back into the ring for this one?
I think we were looking for an excuse to beat the shit out of each other. And we figured the easiest way to do that is to write it into a movie.
Or we just escalate it with each other. I mean, I think the other guys will say, I mean, I maybe not, but I think the other guys will say the same, that like we're constantly moving 1,000 things forward in our subconscious, and then one thing just feels right and it starts moving and we chase that thing. I think that's sort of what happened with this one.
It's sort of, yeah, it's sort of a you sort of like collect ideas and put them together and mold them, and then at a certain point it becomes almost what's the word for it? Like it becomes inevitable. Like there's almost so much inertia that you can't stop, that you're like, okay, now I have to do this, and it becomes more exciting than everything else, or there's sort of more up. It just feels like the thing, and so it steps ahead of everything else you're working on to kind of become the thing that you want to run down, and this became that for us.
Were there any other beat the shit out of each other ideas that you had that?
We got lots of them.
We got plenty.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got so many.
We consistently write just like scenes and set pieces and ideas for things that we want to do, and then eventually we almost like find like what's the movie that we could place that in. You know, it's almost like yeah, there's just like we have an ongoing collection of just sort of tidbits or like sparks of ideas, and then sometimes they go in one movie, sometimes they go in the other.
Did you get it out of your system, or is this going to be a staple of everything you do? Beating the shit out of each other.
I don't know. What do you think, Kyle?
I mean, we'll slide it in there somehow. Whether it's on camera or off camera, we'll fit it in there.
I quite enjoyed it, actually.
That was
I agree.
fantastic. Let's bring in the newbie. Christian, your film Sovereign is the gut puncher viewers may be less familiar with. You're the one grappling with true events. How did you turn nonfiction grim into fiction gold?
Yeah, I don't know. This story came to me kind of organically because I'd had a family member, someone I was really close to, who because of a mental health issue really became involved in this anti-government conspiracy theory type thinking. And really in trying to understand that, I started researching the sovereign citizens movement and came across this crime. And you know, not only did I feel like the crime was compelling and just an interesting story on its own, but I felt like I was, I to find the thing that I wanted to really stake my claim and direct my first film and really, really try to make the effort to really do it. And this story just felt like something that I could personally speak to, and I knew the language, of this weird world, and felt I could really write it.
Did this family member you mentioned become aware of the project?
Yes.
Good
Yeah.
way, bad way, or was he flattered or insulted?
Not super aware. Unfortunately, he passed away when I was editing the film.
Oh boy.
Yeah. It was a pretty kind of an intense, the whole thing was sort of an intense experience, kind of on screen and off screen, emotionally. It was very, I don't, sort of weird that it was my first film that it was that way, but it was kind of a very cathartic and personal experience.
Sounds like it. That's some soaring and uplifting shit, but let's get bleak. me and the viewers are going to be very hurt and angry if you tell us the writing of your opuses was a 20-page a day fun and games. We want to hear about brick walls, dark nights of the soul, moments of doubt and pain. Like a car you can't get out of a ditch, what was a plot strand, character, scene, or even line that you had to write and rewrite to get right? Michael and Kyle, I've seen you Q&A before, and you come off like an intimidating machine that can conquer anything. Give us some vulnerability.
Kyle, go ahead. What's the vulnerability?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, what's cool, I think, also about this panel is you've got everyone on here, if I'm not wrong, wrote and directed. So like, they're all these people are, and except for me, I'm the only odd man out in the group. But I think in that way, you're, at least for us, we're constantly dialing that script and constantly trying to improve everything. I don't think ever in my life I've finished a piece of writing and been like, it's done. You know, it's a lock. I think always you're questioning it, and always you're pressure testing, and always you're saying like, I know I can, every line, it's like, I know I can do better than that, even while people are saying it. And I think for us, you know, there's just like a constant need to create on the script as a living thing, from an intention standpoint, as a person trying to like craft what this narrative is. And so I think struggle happens all along it. Struggle happens in every point of it. I don't think it's easy in any way, shape, or form, but so I guess I didn't answer your question. But
you feel like you're lost all along the way. You know, I mean, like, again, like we've done it before, so you kind of know that you'll end up there, but and so you have that kind of confidence and faith, but you also, I think we'd be lying to ourselves if we said like you're not sitting there going, is this amazing? Is this getting really good, or is it absolute dog shit? And you kind of like, you don't fully know, but you kind of have a little bit of an inkling that it's good, and then it just gets better and better, and you just keep working it, and then like you end up on set and you still keep working it, and you're like rewriting scenes the night before and just trying to dial them in. So I don't know, it's that sort of obsessive sort of neurotic kind of compulsion to try to make something perfect when that's sort of an impossibility that, Kyle and I, and we're lucky that we have this partnership where we can kind of like just bounce things off each other, and there's another person to talk to in the trenches.
Yeah, I'm always jealous of writing partners in that regard. James, where's the effort in your effortlessness?
Yeah, I would agree with the sentiment that for me, is the script is never finished. You just at some point have to let it go. Especially because I'm wearing multiple hats as well, prefer to I don't like rewriting on set. It did happen on Twinless also because we got greenlit 2 weeks before the WGA strike. So when we finally made the film, I was like, changes had been like accumulating in my mind, and then I'm putting them into practice during pre-production. And then also you're making changes for like legal reasons or clearances, and but I would say like there were certain scenes that I felt like were maybe some of the more like emotional linchpin scenes of the film that I was tracking and trying to get right. I think the scene I rewrote the most was the confession scene, and trying to figure out my character's vomit monologue during that. Because I was trying like, whoa, I mean, what can you say in that moment? And I didn't want it to feel too prepared, given the context and circumstance of the confession. So that one I just kept banging my head because it never felt, even like now I still don't feel like I quite got it right, but I kind of also made peace with that because that also felt true to the character, because there's no way to I think make a correct confession. So I tried to ultimately like lean into that. But yeah, I find writing to be it's just like, oh, well, where am I going to put my energy? What scene needs it the most? Because I agree, it's like I always feel like I could have done this better. I'm always so happy when I'm like, oh no, that was a good scene and I wouldn't change a line. That's very rare for me. But when I feel like I can not have to touch something anymore, because the other thing will happen too is sometimes like just jokes or moments, they don't move you in the same way. And that's where I feel like it's good to have like a team. It's like, oh no, I love that line. Don't lose that one. I'm like, oh, okay, well, if you like it so much, fine, I'll keep it in. And so that is often more likely the thing that would happen, where I would like deliver a new draft and be like, wait, where'd that go? I'm like, Oh, you okay, fine, if you say so.
That's great. Yeah, it's funny you bring up the confession scene. I know as a viewer, I was dreading that scene. I knew it was going to happen, so I can only imagine what you're going through as a writer.
What were the other versions of that? I'm so curious. Sorry, I'm probably not supposed to jump in, but like what were the other ways that you thought about doing that the confession scene? I'm just curious.
I mean, I guess like the structure of it was always the same. It was more just the specific words, like what can he say in that moment? Because I was wary of trying it to not making the confession too selfish and too much like I'm asking the audience to let it go. And so I guess the question of like how self-aware is the character in this moment? Because he's
Did it
also
always have the physical element at the end? Like, was that
yeah,
always
I was
there?
always there.
That was never not an option.
Yeah, I mean, I did ask Dylan when we first met. I'm like, how do you feel about this? Like, oh, this is like the reason for this scene. I'm like, okay.
Dylan's just been bottling it
It's
up and
something
like
that I
wanting.
wrote, but then when you have to imagine actually doing it, that's like a whole nother.
He's like, no, I've been waiting for this my whole life.
Wow. Christian, you have a lot you have a lot of things to deal with. There's this great character and he can so easily go too far one way or too far the other way. Was that one of your most difficult stuff, or what else was bothering you?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think trying to, you have Jerry Kane, Nick Offerman's character in the film is so that could go so big or so kind of cartoonish. I think, that's all credit to his performance. I think in the film that hope we successfully rode that line. Um, in the script construction, I'd say the hardest part for me was figuring out how and when to intercut the police storyline, Dennis Quaid's storyline.
Yeah, I was surprised watching the movie a second time that it seems to appear so late, but it
Yeah.
really worked.
Yeah, it's funny because when I, first wrote it, it just felt like that's when it should happen to me, kind of, I guess, intuitively or just as, telling the story. But then, there was kind of this market consideration of like, well, how do you have this big character show up, 40 minutes into the film, or let's try intercutting this and make it more of a two-hander. And I tried those versions and I wrestled with it for a while, but ultimately, just kind of went back to what felt right. And it was maybe a little bit unconventional in that sense, but I think it was the best choice.
Wow, I agree. I agree. Angus, it's such a wonderful film, and it's so has so many. It lulls me in so many nice ways, and then you come up with your son's a sick motherfucker, and it like slapped me in the face. Um, wh- tell me, tell me, getting inside this gentle exterior and the swirling around. I mean, that must have been difficult.
Well, I think, like James says, it's always great to have people around you whose opinions you like, and you give it to them or read it to them or have them read it. And
That's the next question, but keep going.
okay, I'll just keep on the one. And again, it took so long, and I guess as Kyle was saying about how it's all of us are sort of filmmakers and writers, so that you're always writing as you go along. I mean, there's such a writing process when you edit it and you discover maybe you don't need those words. But I come from the theater, and also the first feature I wrote was Junebug, that Phil Morrison directed, and I learned a lot from him. And he had such respect for the text before you shot, and so I really feel that I want to get the script as strong as possible. I don't ever do rewrites on the set. It's too many other things to worry about. Um, and I really bank on really good actors giving me feedback beforehand before we get to the set as to. I always say to them, "This is what I think's happening with the character, but if it doesn't make sense to you, you can change it because it's your character." And there's always a few lines where people say, "Well, could we try this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." So the roadblocks are such. I love when Christian just brought up the word intuition, because that's really what it feels like. You're always following something that you can't really put you can't really say why this feels right or why this doesn't feel right. You're just constantly, I feel, trying to connect to that part of you, to let you, do your creative process.
Right. An important part of the screenwriting process I rarely hear talked about is who do you give the script to when you're done, before you give it to the overlords potentially paying you. Do you have a go-to support group of family and friends? What are you looking for in an ideal first reader? Complete honesty or baby, you're a genius? Angus, let's go back to you. How is your take a good note, ignore a bad note radar?
Uh, I think it's pretty good, although I've had people tell me that if like 3 or 4 people say the same thing, you got to kind of listen to that. But I have a handful of people that I really, really respect, and I listen to their notes, and sometimes I agree with them, and and it's reinforcing, and then sometimes I understand it's just their taste that's different. Most of them are filmmakers, so they would make a movie in a different way. But by and large, you can kind of, I feel like one can kind of feel what, again, what your intuition agrees with and whether something is working or not.
Do you have a go-to group of people or does it change?
Uh, I have uh, I have friends who are not in the business, which often I will read
Oh,
the
interesting.
script to, and that's really interesting because also I was an actor for a long time, and you can feel whether or not they say anything. You can feel their connection or disconnection or not thinking it's funny or moving. You
Oh
just get a
my.
sense in a performance sense. And so then also, Phil Morrison is a very close friend, and I always give my scripts to him. And I respect his viewpoint so strongly that, and we see things very similarly in terms of what the making of things. So I really respect him.
Angus, do you put those on your feet, the whole script, or do you do like a scene? You're like exploring a scene and you're like, hey, I'm just gonna read this out loud to you.
I
Or do you have
usually
a
don't.
discipline?
I usually wait until I have a whole script to do
Amazing.
something. Yeah. I want the whole thing.
Oh my, I can't imagine something I would be least likely to do. That's amazing. That's crazy. It's I remember Diane Wieston reading to Woody Allen. I remember at the end of Hannah and her Sisters. I'm like, what is she doing? But it worked for both, it worked for all of you. Christian, what do you do after you finish a script?
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe it's conventional. I usually send it to my manager as the first person who reads, for me.
You consider your manager a friend?
Yeah, he's a friend. I've been with him for a long time, and I think, yeah. Well, the first person to read my script is usually my wife. I'll give it to her. She's not in the business, but she has great taste, and I respect her just sort of general read on something. And I have other filmmaker friends. My a few friends that I went to film school with. Sometimes I'll pass, but usually it's my manager is the first person to read stuff.
What do you do when your wife gives you a bad note?
Uh, you know, I've found that usually when I get a note, and especially if it's a repeat note from somebody, even if they're not a writer, they're not in the business, the spirit behind, like they'll tell you, oh, I
Yeah,
think this needs to be fixed. And I feel like is wrong, but there is something wrong with it. I think,
absolutely.
yeah.
Their suggestions are never right, but they're not lying that it didn't work for them.
Yeah, there's something there that needs attention, but it's usually they don't, that's not the direct path to it. So I try to, stay open to that.
James, who are your people?
I guess for me, it's varied project to project. On Twinless, I believe I would first send it to my managers. Some projects I'll send it if I have a producer already attached to them first. I think my first film, I didn't have representation at the time, so I don't even remember who I shared it with first. Probably a friend, or maybe no, definitely not my cinematographer. He takes forever to read. Yeah. So I think I kind of just consider who do I think would be a good person to to read it. But I'm also maybe calculating, like, are they somebody who I should wait to let them read it later? Because I try not to ask the same person to read it too many times, if not, if I can help it, just because it's such a favor. Unless
Yeah.
they're like linked to my career in some way, like they're getting paid. So
Do you like complete honesty, or do you want somebody who's gonna be nice?
I think it depends also on the stage. Like if it's a first draft, I'm probably the most vulnerable. So I want somebody who's going to be a little bit more tact with their notes. But if it gets to a certain stage, it's like I'd rather get the harsh notes now than like when the film comes out.
So Kyle and Michael, you obviously each other's your first people reading it, but where do you go afterwards?
I mean, Kyle's wife reads everything. Our producer who works at our company, who's also my partner, Emily, she reads everything right away. And then with a movie like this, we wrote it for us for our financier. We had a first look deal that we wrote it within, so it was just like as soon as we were almost like sending. I think we sent like the first act or like the first 45 pages or 50 pages in progress, just like, hey, check it out. This is where it's going. So it was very iterative because we were, I think, trying to get them engaged and excited to start like budgeting and getting ready to make the movie. So we sort of were like trying to put it on its feet, almost like as it was going. Like we didn't even have the script ready, but we wanted to sort of like be going into production. So I think we probably were sharing earlier than we usually would.
Do you say before you even write the script, like, hey, everybody, this is the idea I'm writing, or do you keep things close to the vest until you have a finished script?
We're
Yeah,
generally
with
sharing,
with
right?
yeah.
You got it, Mike, go.
What'd you say, Kyle?
I was just gonna say, yeah, in this iteration, we're definitely sharing ideas because we're orienting towards actual, like, the way we're working is towards an actual production. So we just want everyone to be aware of like where we're headed because we're going to be making it, and we're writing to make it as fast as possible, like in the most direct way. And so we're sharing in that way towards physical production.
Yeah, we sort of like came forward with like, here's the movie, and we had a pitch, and we had like, this is like what it's called, this is what it is. It's Kyle and I. It's two couples. It's this. It's and laid out the whole framework, and with some of the key scenes that we already knew would be in there. And then we had to find the movie then in the writing process, but a lot of those initial things that we had sort of pitched or presented remained intact in the final version.
Cool.
And how late did you get the women actresses involved? Were they in this process early on or after you finished it?
Uh, no, we had finished the script, but we had met Dakota in the process while we were writing, and we had mentioned that we were making this, that we were writing this, and we were interested in her for it. And she was like, "Well, send it when it's ready." And then, we sent it over, and she like kind of read it and was like, "Great, I'm in. Let's do it." So it was a pretty quick process in that, it was probably the most seamless that we've ever experienced in that regard. But yeah, it was sort of like, draft of a script done, share it with actors. And then we already kind of had our financier. So it was like, as soon as the actors came on, we were just like, great, let's go into production.
Well, it's probably a good time to reiterate that almost all of you, Kyle gets an asterisk, not only wrote your masterworks, you directed them, even acted in them. I'm fascinated by the schizophrenia. What happens to writer you when you become director you? Yes, I realize your films were utterly transcended by amazing actors, amazing keys, and amazing scores. But is it really just fuck the writer when you get to set? What do you do to make sure you're protecting your original visions, or our original visions are relevant? Christian, you nail a scene on your laptop at 1 a.m. in your underwear, but then you get to the battlefield and adjustments need to be made. Take us through it.
Yeah, I try not to be too precious with the specifics of the script on set, but I will say that but I wanted to know that like what was there, we had a version of it. So sometimes we'd have, conversations. I'd have conversations with the actors, and we'd change certain things or we'd do things. But I'd always want to know that I had kind of the original intent there, because I feel like, for me at least, the process, it was so fast that keeping objectivity and sort of trusting yourself in that situation, it just felt safer to me to have, like, here's a version as it was originally intended. Okay, now let's go off and explore. I think you've put the time into the script. You've done all this thinking about it in a calm place. When you're writing, I think it's worth a shot to try to make that version of it work in the moment before abandoning it. So I would always kind of start at that place.
Was there any point where someone, a crew member or a cast member, was way off and you had to slap them a bit?
I wouldn't say slap them a bit, but there were definitely times where scenes would start riffing in a totally different direction, and we just have to recenter things. And I think what was difficult about that in my film is so much of the jargon, the sovereign citizen jargon. The meaning of it is really hard to parse, and so you can get a couple of those.
I demand my remedy. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so if you get a couple of those buzzwords, you can start kind of going in a direction, and next, it doesn't sort of make sense at a certain point. But there wasn't too much of that. It was no, it was all really good.
Wow. Well, I never met a tone I didn't like, and I have a problem with tone. Don't know the meaning of the word. Kyle and Michael, your movie's such a crazy comedy, but do you have a tone that you want, that you have a North Star tone that you're going for, or are you just going with the flow on the set?
No, I think that's kind of the most defined thing that we have of all the things when we go into it. And I think it's hard to articulate. I mean, we try to put it in words, and we'll certainly write it down in sort of like overly like overly articulated ways that maybe like feel a little like we're trying too hard. But at the end of the day, like, Kyle and I would just watch certain movies, and then we would have these sort of North Star movies of like it should, like, that felt like inspirations and things that we just felt like, oh, this feels spiritually connected, or connected to what we're trying to do, and sort of, and then you let go of that and you just make the movie you're making, and you kind of know that, like, you sometimes you're stepping over the line in one direction, sometimes you're stepping over the line in the other direction. And so, like, our whole thing is just like, we want to keep the emotional thread and the emotional integrity and the driver of the film and the reason to care about the film intact. And you never kind of want to lose sight of that or let go of that. But at the same time, pushing the boundaries of that with sort of broadness in physical comedy and slapstick and things that maybe, like, you would find in like a 70s Italian film, but sort of like in this. So it was, again, it was like our way of, like, just trusting that we can have fun. And as long as we just keep an eye on the emotional reason to care and the characters and what the characters are after and what they're, what's important to them, and the audience can track that, like, you can go, you can have someone fall down a set of stairs and then you could still get back on the ride for the movie. I don't know.
I think it's a really challenging thing, and I don't personally have a lot of experience of being a writer that just turns their work over to other people. But I do think it's a kind of a wild element, in the sense that, like, a line can be interpreted by the person reading it in 1,000 ways. And part of the magic of writers is you look at the holistic piece of writing, and it guides you through the dialogue. It doesn't take a lot of words, but it guides you through the dialogue and sort of reveals its tone to you. Like, I think there's a way you read our script and maybe read it like a very broad comedy, because we tend to throw away a lot of our jokes.
Yeah.
Like, we tend to say really ridiculous, stupid things, but say them really authentically and throw them away. So when you read it, you're like, this just seems like people saying crazy things. But I think the magic trick to writing, which somehow happens in good scripts when they come together, is that you sort of can absorb them in a way where you're sort of like clicking into some piece. You might not have all of it, and that's where, you know, these guys being directors, I think, helps a lot. But there is something to that sort of naturally emerges from within a script just by the sheer will of the writer crafting the things around the dialogue.
We also have this sort of secret, not secret weapon, but we have the ability to, like, it makes it much easier when you're in half the scenes or you're in it or I'm in it and we know what the tone is, so we can sort of like, there's like, it immediately sort of like sets the playing field for everyone else who comes into the movie, because we're like, no, this is the way, this is the tone of this movie, this is the shape, this is the way the words come out and things like that, and it sort of like signals to everyone else like, okay, this is the movie we're in. And so I think we lean on that quite a bit, and we trust that, like, okay, we wrote this, we're also performing in it, so we can write really big, broad, dumb things. Like, we can write a character saying a dumb thing, but when Kyle performs it, he throws it away, or it's sort of under his breath, or it's just sort of like a passing thought, and it doesn't come across as this big, dumb joke.
Right. James, I wrote and directed 2 wildly unheralded films where the writer and director couldn't stand each other. How do you keep the peace between James the writer and James the director?
Yeah, I feel like as a writer on the page, Twinless read as a harder comedy, but then how I approach the film, like visually pace as a director, I'm approaching it more like a drama if I was to be like really like binary. I'm similar to Angus in that I come from a theater background where playwright is God, and that's historically how I approach work as a performer as well as in terms of text analysis and trying to figure out, well, how do I say what's written and bring that to life. Twinless is interesting versus straight up my first film, which like Splitsville is a screwball comedy, and there's a specific cadence and rhythm to it. So I was much more married to the words, saying them verbatim. Whereas Twinless, it's funny, Dylan has said that, who plays Roman in Rocky, that he's never been as like, uh, he's never said the words exactly as they were written as much as he has on Twinless. But I would also say I've never worked with an actor who said as few words as they were as he did on Twinless.
That's great.
So I think for me as a director, maybe that's kind of where the disparity is between being a writer and a director. As a director, I'm really trying to create an environment for actors to do their best work. And so finding that process and compromise and meeting the actors where they're at. But I will also say, now that I'm saying this out loud, is maybe I'm also, because there were, especially if there were like lines or moments where I'm performing them because I am the writer, I maybe feel a little bit more liberty to change the words, whereas like Lauren Graham or Aisling Franciosi, I think we're pretty like word for word perfect. I would say Dylan and I maybe took a little bit more liberties with the language. I mean, it's still very specific, but I'd say like if you were to like read the screenplay and then watch like the captions, it wouldn't be like a 100% alignment in a way that I think is because I am the filmmaker as well.
Yeah. Well, Straight Up seems the least improvised film since Philadelphia Story, but I love both the films. Angus, how about you? I know the writer is king in the theater world, but director is king, and you're both in film. So how do you guys get along?
Yeah, it's good to be king. Well, I've had the experience of being just the screenwriter, and I've had good experiences with a director interpreting it and really awful experiences.
Oh.
Where the director never even asked me what I thought my intention was in any part of the script.
Oh, geez.
And so You know, I really, really love actors, and when you get really good actors, you can trust them. And I speak a lot before we start shooting because we have like a day to shoot. I mean, to rehearse. Um, and um, and so there's not any. It's always trying, even from the beginning when I start to conceive it and write the script. It's always trying to get it to what the final film will be. And so I don't feel there's any kind of conflict between being the writer and the director. It's always, to me, trying to realize something that will exist in time and space to be experienced by other people. I'm interested, though. I was an actor for a long time. I would never want to be in my own films. I just think it would be so difficult to 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 know, particularly one's own performance, to gauge that when you're, so I'd love to know from, Michael and Kyle and James how that is to experience that.
I don't
That's
know.
well, it's funny. It's funny. I'd like to know too, but it's funny. Like I'm hearing you talk, Angus, and I'm like, why wasn't Angus in a little prayer? He'd fit right in. David Strather could use a friend.
Yeah.
Do you police each other, Michael and Kyle?
Police each other.
Well, I think it's an interesting for us. It's different, and James can speak to his experience on it. But for us, we're co-writers, we're acting in it. But then when we get into production, I'm an actor and a producer on the movie, and Mike's the director. And there's a clear line for us. I for myself, just really think I don't know how dual directors do it. I think it's a hard thing and you're making fast decisions and it's about one person's perspective. And so I really try and respect the fact that like, great, now I'm an actor and I'm allowing him to be the director in these scenes, regardless of my preconceived notions of what I wrote and how I thought it would come out. That's a pleasure for me because it allows me to free myself up and live an experience in real time and have someone exterior to me give perspective. So that's my sense of how it comes to be. I don't know, Mike, you can speak to yours.
Well, I mean, like I really love the process because it's like one less variable in a strange way. And I know that's a crazy thing to say, but it's like if if like if we're writing the scenes for us to play or for me to play, like I kind of have a confidence that like, okay, this is something that I can do and I know how to do it. So it's like there's like a confidence that like, okay, this will work and we'll pull this off, especially like with the physicality of the fight scene and some of that stuff. Like, I don't think that would have been possible with it. Maybe we could have found actors to do it, but I think probably would have been tough to push them as far as we pushed ourselves to like
No
in the
way.
way we did it. But I genuinely just it's the whole thing of like being like watching yourself, I think that goes out the window pretty quickly. Like I, I I hate looking at myself. I hate the sound of my voice. Fine, whatever. Moving on. We got to make a movie. And so like I'm sort of like looking at a different person at a certain point, and I don't really care. And so I think all the sensitivities around that kind of go away, and you're just like, how do I go make the movie? I think the one thing I've learned that I would change and really try to be a little more thoughtful of, even for myself, is like sometimes you think you can do it all as a director. You know, you're writing, you're directing, you're acting, and as a director, you know, you come in with this sort of approach where you're like really trying to give everything and create the best environment for the actors in front of you to do their best work. So, you know, I would prioritize other people's coverage, or I would go, okay, cool, let's go into this person's coverage and really make sure you get it, and then like maybe go to mine last, and then as a result maybe I'm spent because it's an emotional scene, right? And so those are the type of things that like you try to be giving, but you actually hurt the movie in the long run if you just like if you're, you know, if you're doing it all and then you just have nothing left in the tank. And you know, in The Climb, I remember like, you know, there's a scene at a funeral where I'm grieving the loss of my wife. And then Kyle shows up and there's this whole fight and this whole thing happens. And the take that's in the movie, I don't cry. But probably 8 takes prior to that, I cried. And like I cried because we did it like 15 times. And so it was one of those things where it was like, you just have to be smarter, I think, when you're writing, you're acting and directing. I think like, yeah, I think it was like Ben Affleck or someone said like if you're directing yourself, give yourself a couple more takes. I don't know. And I think I would take that advice next time.
Yeah,
but
I would concur with all that. I feel like being a director is kind of like being daddy to everyone, and sometimes be like, well, who's daddy to me?
Yeah.
I think I'm also somebody who also because I was so much more green as a performer than my main cast is try to give myself enough time. But then because I'm also a producer and it's low budget, you're always fighting that war. So to me, it was actually the producing aspect of it that was most in conflict with the other tasks, and yeah, trying to find that balance. But I also do think that as because I think the worst thing that an actor wants to hear from a writer or a director is being given a line reading. But I think when there is a specificity in tone or
I
humor,
thought they love line readings.
the nice thing is I don't have to like I wrote this role that I felt like I was perfectly cast for, so I didn't have to like give myself line ratings.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, if your initial impulse is to watch each other beat the shit out of each other, who wants Ben Affleck and Matt Damon to beat the shit out of each other? You want to do it. Angus, I think you should give it a shot for your next one.
What, beat myself up?
Well, not beat yourself up. Well, beat yourself up as an actor. Okay, I'm going into my cool down questions. This is a good time for any viewer out there who wants to be part of this party to submit a question into the Q&A button, and hopefully I'll find it. But right now, I want to go back to before the beginning. What's the movie that we're going to have fun now. What's the movie that made you want to make movies? Not just a favorite movie, but a movie that made you say, hey, I want to do that. I can do that. Christian.
All right, that's a lot of pressure. I would say it's not really a deep cut film. It would be Heat for me. I remember it was like, I think it was 1995 or 96. I can't remember which year it was. But they were sending out these Academy screener tapes, and I got a hold of one of these. I grew up in Los Angeles, and so the tapes, got passed around. And I remember getting this like double VHS Academy screener, and I think I was like in middle school or something. And I remember watching that film, and it was just, I was totally alone watching it just on a VHS, and I remember seeing that film and being completely blown away. And that was kind of the start for me of really understanding the power of what the medium really was.
Oh, great. Have you seen LA Takedown? Michael Mann's
I
TV
did after the
movie
fact,
version?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like watching the stand-ins run lines, but
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah.
Angus, what's the movie that made you want to make movies? The one that said not just Fantasia, like with your holding your mother's hand, but the movie that said like, hey, I can do this.
God, I could not possibly come up with one film. I will say, though, as an actor, though, the plays of Sam Shepard were like so exciting to me in its humor, and it has very little to do with my work, but they made me want to write more. I mean, I think I was writing before that. And then so many other, I came of age in the late 70s when, filmmaking was so exciting and I saw everything. And so all those films, which were very naturalistic and in a vein that was it was kind of gritty. That's when later became an acting student, and it was those kinds of films that made me excited by the possibility of film. But I will say when I started to try to write a screenplay, I went and read It Happened One Night by Robert Riskin, which I think is a perfect film from, I think, 1936, because I didn't even know in a screenplay, how much do you describe and how much of the action do you describe and what do you say? And so those are the things that come to me offhand.
Great, great. James, I can't imagine you have just one.
For me, it's not a film actually. It's a TV show, which was Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That
Oh,
was
yeah.
my formative experience. Like, oh, this is art. And I think what's looking back on in retrospect was that it was a show that shifted genre week to week, and it was never just one thing. And I think that sort of now permeates through my own taste and how I experience the world and in my writing, because I feel like you know, a lot of people have asked me about like traversing tones in Twinless, and to me that's sort of emblematic of grief, is it doesn't exist in one color. So for me, yeah, it was that show.
Fantastic. Do you ever consider doing the kind of a genre film, an action film? I would love to see the Sweeney injection into the.
Yeah, I've been thinking I would love to do an action comedy. I'm really a genre agnostic, as I hate to hear development executives say. Yeah, for me it's more about character. And I like yeah, to dabble in different you know, playgrounds.
Right. Kyle and Michael, before you tell me your favorite movies that influence you and all that, I want to know what's the biggest disagreement you ever had about a movie? One of you liked it, one of you didn't like it.
Oh
Is there one
man.
that is there one that you have a battle over?
Great question.
We have a battle over movies. We have more of battles over music because I like electronica EDM stuff, and Mike thinks it's ridiculous. So you get so you
Ooh,
don't
I
get
don't
turned
think
off.
I'm open to anything. I just
Okay,
yes,
fine.
you put
who's
stuff
the-
on and I say,
who's
please
the-
turn that off.
Like, please turn it off. I'm trying to work.
I can't
Wow.
think.
Who's the Frey? Who's the Frey fan?
Who's the Frey fan? I think everyone on this
It's
call
really-
is
yeah,
a
I
Frey
think
fan.
every person
We're all
on
Frey
the
fans.
group.
Whether we admit it or not, we're all Frey fans.
Now stuck in your head.
Well, what's some
I-
favorite movies?
we do love the Frey. Favorite movies. It's weird because it's different times of life that things inspire, but I think they're the movies that stand out to me that sparked a passion to want to act were probably Ace Ventura. Like Jim Carrey for me was just like everything. And then I got really into Charlie Chaplin when I was like in middle school, and so Gold Rush was sort of like really blew my mind. And then when I was in high school, I watched The Big Lebowski like over and over and over again, and it became like this sort of like thing that I would just be like, what is this? And that kind of became this North Star script that I would when I was in college, I was trying to figure out how to write screenplays. I would just keep it printed out, and I would look at the way the dialogue and the way they would talk over each other and not answer. Someone would say something, but the other person would respond with something that didn't fully
Yes.
acknowledge the fact that the other person said something. And I thought that it just felt like true to life, but in a very like intentional and orchestrated way. And that it was sort of like a rudimentary way of going like, oh, try to replicate this sort of thing. I don't know.
Right.
I went and saw Robin Hood Men in Tights in the theater, and
No, come on.
and I was like, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. And my dad was like, wait, there's more. And I think Mel Brooks's stuff is like, obviously, you know, I find it to be, it's one of the things where I looked at it and I was like, oh, this fits. Like I get what they're doing here. And it felt like on the same wavelength, and sort of sent me down the Monty Python path and that whole thing. But comedy for me was a real big part. I just find it so much fun.
Funny, I watched the Mel Brooks documentary, and I'm like, the first half has Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, and then the second half is like, do I need to see Men in Tights again?
I haven't seen it. I probably haven't seen it since then. So I'm
It's
not
pretty
sure if it
great.
holds
There's
up,
some
but
great bits.
Okay, God
I
damn it.
remember being blown away. I walked out of the theater like, what?
Oh my
What is
God.
happening?
Every
Yeah.
time I think I'm among peers, you guys are so much younger than me. I was
Sorry.
already the grim Men in Tights, Mel's ruin.
So good.
All right, I got some more lightning round questions coming up later, but let's dip into the Q&A and see what Vox Populi has to say. Oh, and right off the bat, it's a golden oldie. You got to ask it though. It's required by law by all moderators, screenwriting table. Do you outline or you dive right into final draft? Where are we with outlines, people?
I'm always afraid I'm never going to finish a script, so I start at the beginning and go all the way through. And yes, there's a long time where I take notes but I want the whole story there, and I always have to trick myself and say if it's horrible, I don't have to ever show it to anybody. But I want to get something on paper all the way through, and it does begin to me with characters, scenes, ideas, and then story, and then you go. Seems to be an impetus for me that now it's time to write the actual screenplay.
Yeah, that sounds good. James, are you an outliner?
It's varied project to project. I've also worked in TV where you have to outline. I've done like a Save the Cat, like a very structured to the page kind of beat by beat outline.
It's ruined everything. It's turned screenwriting into Mad Libs. I don't like it.
I would say I can find it to be a little bit rigid, and I've also done no outlining, and sometimes I think that's where the most original discoveries come from. So in this current project I'm working on, I'm trying something different and trying to think more in terms of scene work and filling in beyond that. But I already have a sense of the overall structure and where it ends.
Yeah. Yeah, I like my own idiosyncratic outlining. I just hate performative outlines that I have to turn in.
Mm-hmm.
Christian, what about you?
Yeah, I do outline quite a bit. I think it's something I'd like to get away from. Actually,
Use the force.
Yeah, I mean, because I outline and then inevitably when you write the first draft, I feel like the outline's wrong, or I get halfway through and I realize the outline isn't true to what this character would be doing, and so I don't know if it's helping or hurting, but I do outline. But for me, knowing the ending is kind of the most important thing. I think as long as I know how the thing is going to end, more or less, I feel comfortable with that ambiguity, even if I know the outline is kind of wrong. I just sort of feel good to write it.
Your films all have sublime endings. Did you know them before you started writing? I know you
yes.
did. I know you did, Christian. I got a whiff of your ending before it happened because I'm an old veteran screenwriter. Like, oh, you rascal, this is going to be great. But Kyle and Michael, are you outliners?
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel the same way you do, which is like I love outlining for myself and absolutely despise outlining to submit it for someone else to give me critique on what's wrong with the story. So like as a function, as a writer, I think it's helpful in the sense that like anything that gets me to stop procrastinating and write a page of dialogue is time worth spent. So if that's what's in service of like, oh, I know where I'm going, I have like a confidence to move forward, then I find it valuable. But same with Christian and probably with everyone on here, we both tend to drift away from our outline. I don't know if we've ever.
Well, there's a thing.
Yeah, executed off.
There's a thing that happens where for us at least, where we lay out the outline, and then until you get into like finding the scenes and finding the meat of it, like you kind of like you find the way the words come out and the characters and how the thing comes to life, it tends to inspire ideas that break the outline, and then you have to sort of rebuild it. So we're sort of like always going back and forth, and then once the full script is there, we just end up abandoning our outline document, and then we just work in writer duet in our script, and we just like put highlighted notes in each section of what we want to change and adjust and like move. So we just end up like the script just becomes a like working outline. It's sort of insane, but
yeah.
All right, Amador has he's trying to get, they're trying to get philosophical on me, but looking back, I'm going to this may be a little floor of a question, but I'm going to give it to them. Looking back at your own journey, what's the risk that you took in writing a script that you failed made all the difference, whether it was a creative risk or a personal one? This can be a general question about your entire screenwriting career. What was the risk you took? It's not one of my questions.
I don't know how to answer that. I mean, I don't know what the risk is, except,
All right, let's keep it to the moderator. Let's keep it to the moderator.
maybe having the hubris to think that you could make a film. I mean, maybe that's, you have to have some kind of confidence to push it forward and to get it out there, or even to show it to someone.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I
think
think
the concept of the question is predicated upon the biggest risk comes before, like the fact that you're even pursuing this as a career and a thing, and you're like going, hey, I'm going to be a writer and I'm going to go out and I'm going to try to figure out how to make something that someone will read and then someone will make, and all the things is the risk in itself. Like once you're writing the script, you can kind of do whatever you want, because at the end of the day, you're just trying to like surprise. You're trying to do something different. It's like you want it to be good and good enough like other things, but also different enough to where people go, wow, this feels unique and like something new. So I think like you kind of have to take risks in the creative sense.
James, not to put you on the spot, but like, did you feel catharsis in the process of what you did? Were you seeking it, or was there something about it for you in this particular project? Because I know this one's a little more personal in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, it's to me more personal in the journey than like any autobiographical elements, because it's not. But like I started writing in 2015, so to me it is sort of a mirror of my life, and like just the Sisyphean task of trying to make something and having it be my baby and my love for so many years, and questioning if it will be worth it, because there were so many times where it felt like it was just never going to happen, and there was like a dark night of the soul, to quote Save the Cat again, where I felt like I needed to like leave this industry because I didn't see a path forward, and I was broke as fuck and taking a JavaScript course online, and so for me, like my closest friend told me like he feels like maybe versus some peers that I went to school with, that he was complimenting that I guess my resilience, because he feels like a lot of other people might have just given up, and maybe that's because I had less going on in my life, and wasn't as content in other areas, and so I just fixated on this film. But yeah, I bet on myself, and so for me, the fact that I'm here now, and I made something that I'm so proud of, and that I feel also seen through the work in that way. Yeah, it's been incredibly fulfilling in that regard.
Oh, we ended up coming with some great answers for that question. Hey, James, I'm curious, did your twin ex-boyfriend see the film, and did you get a report in from him?
I have not heard from him, but that's because he died. No, I'm just
Oh, fuck it. Well, anonymous attendee, anonymous attendee, my favorite person, kind of stole one of my lightning round questions. So I got a couple to throw out you guys to close up. All right, bonus lightning round questions. What's the worst piece of screenwriting advice you've ever been given? And what's a piece of screenwriting advice you wish you had been given? Something you learned the hard way, wisdom that you can impart to all of us now. Angus,
I'll say the worst was having a producer say, no one is going to change your script, and then discovering that someone else has taken it and completely changed it and tried to put their name on it.
oh man. That's bad. Is there a piece of advice that you wish somebody would have told you that's true? And maybe they did tell you, or but you had to learn it.
I think it goes back to listening to your intuition and to also be opening that you don't know, to open that you don't know everything, especially if you're a young screenwriter. You have to have this weird line between confidence enough to do it and trying to understand that you and your soul is what you have that's more valuable than any kind of genre or whatever's the biggest thing that's being going on. It's finding a connection to your own true intuition while being open to not knowing everything.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of naivete. Somebody asked me a similar question, like if I had to go back to working on headers in a video store, what piece of advice I would give myself, and I always say nothing, because if I would have been told anything, I wouldn't have written the script. But like I needed it. But Christian,
I think there's also
sorry.
on the positive side. I'm struggling with the negative, but I'm sure there's lots. I just blocked them out. I think on the positive side, I think the one thing that I was sort of when I was first starting out is this idea that writing is a trade. Like it's something that it's physical action that you do, and you have to do a lot of it. It's not like it's not at least for me. Maybe you guys are different, but for me, it really resonated that like I have to do it a lot in order to really get there. And I do my best when I'm really working a lot and not being precious about the things that I've written before and protecting them, but rather inventing and putting words down. I think that I think I would say to young writers, which is just like, if you want to write, you got to write. Like you got to write. You don't write one thing and then try and get it made for 10 years. We've written so much stuff that never got made in order to get to this point. So I think it's about a lot of writing. If you want to write, you have to write. That's stupid.
Yeah, I think that gets lost on a lot of people, that there needs to be a work ethic. That's why when I was asking my questions, I make a big point of finishing a script, because so many people don't finish a script. They keep asking me questions about who do I go to a room to pitch something. Like I'm an old man. I remember back in the day where you could walk in a room and say a cat that shits money and somebody would write you a check. But pitches really don't happen anymore, and that you just got to have something in your hand, a product, and you got to, like, even if nothing happens with it, you have this work of labor that you did.
That's a good pitch. I'll buy it.
James, what's some bad advice you've been given?
So I'm going to, I guess, good advice again, which is, and then based on what you just said, maybe a little bit, I don't think it is at odds, but I think it might sound contradictory, which is I feel like I used to beat myself up a lot more for not being like a kind of writer who wakes up every morning at 7 and writes for the first 3 hours of every morning. And I wish I had given myself more grace when I was younger to understand that my process is thinking and agonizing, and that is still writing. And the more I've worked with professional writers, the more I understand that I'm not alone in that, in that feeling, and that I'm not a failure just because I don't have like a page count that I can point to at the end of every week.
Yeah, dear God, I didn't mean to insinuate that I'm
No,
alone.
and I don't think, but I think there can be a misperception that that's like the only way you're writing is when you're actually producing pages. And I think writing is so much more encompassing than that, because I think writing is a state of mind.
Well, that's what drives me nuts about movies about writers. It always has the guy in front of a typewriter or a computer with fade in and like, oh no, what do I write next? Like that's not the way you do it. You don't sit in front of your computer. It is collecting acorns. It is collecting ideas, the little things that you think are not going to go anywhere, and then suddenly they build into something.
Didn't the Coen brothers say we take a lot of naps? Isn't that right?
I heard that in one Q&A, but
Yeah, they're like, "What's your secret?"
have
They're
been a
like, "We
joke.
take a lot of naps." Maybe that's not them. Maybe that's just us.
That's the key reason I'm not a very good director. Naps are a very important part of my process, and I never met a lunch penalty I didn't like. Christian, do you have some good or bad advice for us?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would say, for me, it took a long time to kind of trust my own taste, I guess. early on coming out of film school, I think I felt a lot of pressure to write towards like some imaginary market. I thought, you get all this advice from somebody of like what's going to sell, what's not going to sell, what people are looking for. And so, I spent years writing things that I just didn't connect to taste wise at all. I have some new person I was working with and they'd say, you need to write a demonic possession script. And then
Yeah.
I'd write something and think, I don't like horror movies at all. What am I doing? And I think it took a couple experiences. I had an experience on a film that I'd co-written something like that. Thing got made. It was wildly rewritten afterwards. I wasn't part of the production at all. And it was such a gut punch experience, like to see the thing come out and have my name on it, honestly. And I guess at that moment I just realized like there's so many easier ways to make a living in this world. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And I think so to learn to trust your own taste and just for better or worse, like write the things that you are interested in, talk about I think making films for your peers and for the type of films you'd like to see it, that's something I like. And also just another thing that was said is, I think touched on is for me, seeing writing as a craft, I think was helpful. I had this idea that like writers, you're just born with this incredible talent or you're not. And early on, everybody told me you shouldn't be writing, like you can't write, you're not a screenwriter. And I don't know, but I had a few friends that encouraged me otherwise and said, no, this is a craft. This is something you can get better at, and I think that growth mindset was really important to me, especially starting out, to think of it more as like, this is an artistic craft that you're involved in, and it's something that you can learn to get better at and hone, and don't take it so personally as like a statement of, whether your talent is valid or not. This is just a thing you're learning to do.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, no, I never understand when people say, I hear horror westerns are hot right now, that's what you should be writing. That
Eventually they'll be right. Eventually.
yeah.
It's
On the
it's-
round table before I compared it to a star is the light of a planet that blew up 2,000 years ago. So by the time you read it in Variety, it's already dead.
yeah.
But
If I can, sorry, piggyback off of that, because you reminded me of an Ira Glass quote, that I'm going to paraphrase because I can't recall it specifically, but it's about the gap in between your current output and your taste. And there's going to be a period where what you believe is good is far superior to what you can create, but you just have to work through that. And eventually over time, you will close that gap. And I believe that also speaks to that idea of having like a growth mindset over a fixed mindset. And I love that.
wow, I'm going the wrong way, I think sometimes. But okay, wow, that seems like a great place to end. Let's see, we got 15 more minutes. What do you want? All right, somebody brought up the editing room. Let's talk about the greatest place in the room, the editing room. Do you think editing is a continuation of the writing process, or is the script completely irrelevant at this point? Is the editor just listening to your commands, or do you take feedback from your editor?
Well, I think I mean, it certainly depends on the person. I mean, I think there's some great editors who can kind of craft a film and can take it depends on the film, but who can take a film and turn it into something really unexpected and better than anything you could have imagined at the outset. And sometimes you shoot a film that's 75% or 60% of what you maybe hoped for, and you're finding it in the edit, and you're finding ways to sort of reinvigorate sections and scenes and sequences that don't quite hit the way you intended them to hit. But for me, I guess it's more about constantly rewriting the film and finding and layering the film. So it's almost like every single aspect of filmmaking is sort of like a brush or something that we get to paint with. And I think something that we've learned a lot through the process is how much you can rewrite a film in the edit, how much you can rewrite a film through ADR or putting different words in people's mouths, even when they're on screen, or and just constantly finding ways to layer in through the soundscape of the film, just to create energy where there wasn't energy, or to create put story or jokes or whatever there might be. So I think that like the 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 visual is one thing, and that's certainly like the first stop. You're picture editing, and you're finding how you want to put the movie together, and what that rhythm looks like, and what the style and what the pace, but I would say like the biggest tool I have as a filmmaker is sound. And so I rely on it like so heavily. Like Kyle and I probably did 30 ADR sessions for our last
Wow.
movie, where we
Wow.
would just, I mean, we have an ADR booth in our studio, and we just every day we would jump in there and we go, try this, try that, do this, do that. And so it's not that the movie's not working, it's that you're just always trying to make it better. You're always, even like a line reading that's just slightly not hitting the way it needs to. It's like, let's try it with a little bit different inflection and see if that changes the experience for an audience. And sure enough, it does. And you don't know why, but it does. And so I think it's like being attuned to the power of sound and rewriting dialogue, and is just to me is kind of everything.
When you say it's done, is it a moment of triumph or is it a moment of, oh shit, is it really done?
The film?
Yeah.
Well, my first two films, I opened up the sound mix after the premiere on both of them. So I guess
Oh
I
my
don't know
God.
I mean, not intentionally, but it was just, they're just things you had to, it was like, I'm sitting in the premiere going, I gotta fix that, gotta fix that, gotta fix that, so
Oh
it's,
my
It's
God.
also a product of us going towards festivals with it. Like we were
Yeah.
jammed up against it for festivals, so we were hammering to deliver to the very last, like literally grab the DCP and put it on the airplane and show up and plug it in on both times.
Wow. I heard a story about William Wyler watching The Big Country at a repertory theater, and he went up to the projection booth and tried to recut it. But Angus, is the editing room a happy place for you?
I love it. If I were not a writer or a director, I would want to be an editor. I love editing. I love because you have the thing there that you then get to play with. You have like the clay is all there on its armature, and you're just trying to refine it. Um, but I work very closely. I mean, there's so many different ways for directors to work with editors. Some, say, go off and do your first cut and show it to me. I like to be there all the time, and fortunately, I've had editors who don't think that's a pain in the ass. Um, I just really, love to put it together, and I think it is refining, not so much sound, but again, where you have a scene that you wrote and then you shot it, and then when you see it put together, you understand that there are a lot of moments or lines that aren't needed because your actors have already done that. The line isn't needed. And a big example is I had a small child in my first film that I directed, and she really could act, but it was sort of, she had two modes. She was either hysterical or very natural, and I couldn't get her to be less than that. So I continually in the edit kept taking out her dialogue because right before she spoke and right after she spoke, she was really alive. So her performance comes off really well. And that was one
Wow.
of the joys of being able to, refine the final product in the edit.
Yeah, my brother had a actress who, when you said cut, her facial expression when you said cut was so good that they ended up using that.
Yeah.
Um, Christian, we're getting everybody in the last 8 minutes. Christian, are you in? Do you talk to your editor every day, or let them play? Let them play.
My background actually is in editing. That's kind of what I have been doing for the past 15 years before
Oh,
doing this
wow.
film.
Even
So
before you wrote anything?
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I've
interesting, interesting.
started out in trailers, and out of that, cut trailers, commercials, and then worked in docu-series stuff for a long time. And so that's been my day job for a while. And for me,
How did it change after when you're a writer director walking into your own editing room? How did you look at it differently?
I it's just a very hands-on process for me. The person who edited my film with me, someone who I've collaborated with for years. Actually, we've cut shows together. We've cut, you know, a lot of different projects together. I've known him since high school. Actually, I mean, we've worked together for years, and so I think for me, editing is when I'm shooting or writing, I can't help but kind of see a timeline. You know, it feels very elemental in that way to me, and editing for me, I would say is kind of a distillation process rather than like an additive process. It's not to say that you know you're not switching in ADR or line swaps or things like that or cheating things, but I try to I guess I love when things feel intentional, and I feel like if in the edit you can kind of distill something down to feel even more intentional, uh, I guess that's sort of my process for some reason. I'm not sure why, but yeah.
Excellent, excellent. James, you're the fat lady singing. What do you have any last words to say about editing?
Yeah, I would say my process is a little bit more similar to Christian. I try to avoid ADR if I can. I mean, I guess I see kind of the whole process from right to me, editing is another word synonymous with revising, and I think that's what
Yes.
we do when we're writing, and that's what we do on set. And that's why I'm really fond of trying to do as many takes as possible. Twinless was a unique challenge for me versus my first one, which was a screwball comedy and very fast paced and many pages, but then a shorter runtime. Whereas Twinless was a tight script, it was only 100 pages, but the assembly cut ended up being 150 minutes. And it was sort of written like a house of cards with a lot of plants and payoffs, which made the editing process a really challenge. In terms of trying to do that distillation process of if you lose something, then you kind of have to lose the other side of it, but like trying to like keep this like juggling act at work. And I surprised myself the amount of things that I could cut entire scenes, characters, pieces of backstory that I thought were so important to plant for a payoff, but I was surprised at how subtext was still there and the audience would still understand things that I didn't think they would get if I didn't say it explicitly in one scene. So
Wow.
that was an interesting process for me. Trying to.
Can you tell me 150 minutes? Can you tell me a painful cut?
Oh, a painful cut. I
I
mean,
noticed
a lot of it was
I noticed straight up's Katie Finley in the
yeah.
credits, but I don't remember in the movie. Did
Katie Finley played, it's really a cameo of
okay.
when it's the main title sequence when I'm eating a sandwich and
Oh, she's the one who asked if
the one who asked for the chair. Yeah.
I always wanted to do a movie of somebody asking me if that chair is free, but there's no other chairs but the one I'm sitting in. But this has been an intense, remarkable roundtable with no air. I'm very proud of all of you guys. I'm gonna go and take a spits. That was great. I guess I'm just gonna wave goodbye to everyone and wave goodbye to you guys. Look forward to your next stuff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is great.